Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
My God, how tired am I of living in this hell? I cried, breathing Maria, taking my daughter for a walk. But is this the way a rich woman should live? Was this how she had imagined it all? When for a year she had diligently attracted the attention of a promising guy named William. And it worked. They began to meet. Soon he asked her to marry him. And Maria was sure this was her ticket to a prosperous future. Ahead of her awaited boutiques and travel, yachts, and expensive champagne. But reality was much harsher. William worked all day and sometimes stayed in the office overnight. Yes, Maria was not mistaken. He really was a very promising and motivated young man. And his goal was to spin up his business as quickly as possible and provide his family with everything they needed. He bought a 2-story cottage in an elite area of the city. However, the second floor required renovation, and now there was a constant knocking or talking in an incomprehensible language. In short, no peace. After the wedding, William insisted that Maria give birth. "But I wanted to live a little for myself," said the stunned girl. She wasn't ready for motherhood. At least, not right now. Maybe someday in 5 or 7 years, but not now. "Maria, I'm 30. That's a great age to be a father. You're 23. It's a great time too, a young body. It's a good time for you to have a baby. Why drag it out? Can't you live with a baby? You make it sound as if you'll be put in a cage after you give birth." Maria couldn't cross her husband. She was very afraid of disappointing him. He might find someone else more agreeable. So she agreed. And after the birth, when she asked for a nanny, her husband was adamant. "Why do we need a nanny? My daughter has a mother. We hired a housekeeper. You do not have to cook and clean. You have to take care of the baby. That's your direct responsibility. I, for example, was raised by my mother alone, not even a father, and look what happened. I think I grew up pretty good, and you can do it." During their time together, Maria realized that William was quite a principled man, and if he ever said no, there was no point in insisting on his request. She had to raise her daughter on her own, and it was unbearable. Summer was in full swing, and instead of the beach and the resort, she had to sit at the playground with the same mothers and listen to their chatter about the children's illnesses and problems. It's not like there's anything else to talk about. So today, she was on her way to the playground when both were ready to go out. The girl suddenly stopped like a man and helped with her head. She spoke very poorly and mostly showed everything in gestures. Now she was making it clear that she had forgotten something and didn't want to go. "Anna, what's wrong?" "Tired," sighed Maria. "What else do you need?" The little girl ran into the room and came back with a bright sword in his hands. "What do we need that ball for? We already have a whole backpack of toys. Let's leave it at home." But the girl stubbornly kept her head down. Stubbornness and perseverance, she was like her father. And Maria had no desire to argue. Taking the ball, they walked out of the gate of the cottage. On the way to the playground, a car overtook them and braked sharply, raising a column of dust. Maria was about to get indignant, but her good friend Miranda jumped out of the car, and there was no limit to her happiness. As the girls hugged each other, Miranda said to Maria, "Come with us. There is a wild beach nearby. I met such guys who were amazing. Cute and funny. That's what they told me about this place. But I said I'd be with a friend. You can't let me down." And she pouted playfully. "Miranda, how do you imagine this?" Maria marveled and pointed at her daughter with her eyes. "Well, take it with you. We will sit. The girl will play in the sand." What difference does it make to her where to play in the sand? Maria was so confused, pointing to the car. "Didn't you know you were a young mother? I told them everything. And in principle, they don't mind a girl. I'm telling you boys, fire away. What are you doing?" And she, without waiting for her friend to agree, turned around and headed for the car. Maria looked around confused and quickly followed her friend. She was very afraid that her husband would find out about her antics. But the desire to be on the beach cheerful company overcame all fears. "We'll solve problems as they arise," she reassured herself. "And how will William find out?" Anna is mostly silent like a fish. The beach is wild and therefore deserted. The chances of meeting acquaintances there are slim. And her husband returns too late to notice his wife's absence. By this time, they will be home for sure. I comfort myself. Maria, with a light heart, got into the car and went to a picnic she will never forget. Once there, Maria got out of the car and clapped her hands in delight. She had never been here before, and the place was beautiful. The cleanest sand and water as blue as the sky. She lowered her daughter onto the sand on one of the guys, said, "Let's go a little ways over there," and he waved his hand in the right direction. The shore here is steep, and there's a pool below. If you fall in, you'll never get out. The girls obediently followed their new friend. Here is a beautifully gentle descent and shallow. The little girl can swim too. Besides them, there was another family on the wild beach. They were sitting with their backs to them, and also with a little boy about 5 years old, who at the sight of Anna immediately livened up, not paying attention to anyone. The girls began to rub the blanket. The guys were unloading everything they had bought for the picnic from the trunk of the car. In half an hour, the whole company was bursting with laughter. They had already had time to bathe. The guys, apparently forgetting that one of them was driving, were drinking alcohol. The girls were coquettishly sipping champagne. Anna and her new friend were playing in the sand. Everything indicated that they were going to have a wonderful day. Maria looked again at the couple sitting nearby. She noticed that the woman, young enough, was wearing a very old, stretched-out bathing suit. And on the bedspread, there was a bottle of water, and that was it. The car was nowhere to be seen either. "I wonder how they got here?" asked Maria in a whisper, without lowering her eyes. On foot, one of the boys answered calmly. "It is true, it is a long walk, about 40 minutes, but it is possible. And I know them. It's my classmate and her husband. They do not have a car. They have a lot of debts." Strangely, with a kind of contemptuousness, said Maria. "Is there no money even for a normal swimsuit? Probably that's why they go to the wild beach in front of people, of course. You can't go out in such a thing." And the girls laughed a little. But not everyone has a lot of money. Suddenly, the same guy came to the couple's defense. They used to live well, too. While he was working, they took a car on credit, just like everybody else in our village. And then at the car service where he works, he got hit by a car. The cable snapped. How did he survive? The doctors are still amazed. Something got in the way and the car didn't crush him completely. Then the whole village was abuzz with horror when they heard about the tragedy. He was in the hospital for a long time. They sold the car to get him back on his feet. Molly did great. She didn't leave her husband. She works as a nurse. She did not give up on him. Now she's working alone to support the whole family and pay the mortgage. There's no time for swimsuits. Could you do that? The girls got quiet. Same here. When the guy recovers, she'll buy herself a swimsuit. But the family is strong. I'd like a wife like that too. Maria, having heard all this, got angry. She did not show how she is such a posh woman and how guys admire some beggar. Suddenly, Anna came up with a pack of juice and gestured for her to open it. When a satisfied girl with a goodie ran to her friend and wanted to share, Maria yelled at the whole beach, "Daughter, don't let the boy drink juice out of his pipe. It might be loaded." The girl was confused, but did not dare to disobey her mother, put the pack away, and the boy's father, taking his son by the hand, took him to the river to bathe. He called out to Molly too, but he didn't want to swim or even to rest here at all. The woman was uncomfortable. Anna, not knowing what to do alone, began to roll the ball in the sand. It was boring to play alone, and the married couple from the Fallen quickly went home. "That's right, let them go," muttered Maria, noticing their gathering. "What on earth were they bothering you for?" One of the boys asked. "I don't know," she shrugged. "I don't want Anna to play with their son." They were a bit squeamish. She squinted as she noticed the tension in the company. Miranda decided to lighten the mood. "Come on, it's such a beautiful day. Let's have a drink." She took a glass of cognac, as she and Maria had finished their champagne. The little girl stood weeping as she watched her friend being led away from the beach. Out of grief, she kicked the ball with such force that it rolled down a small slope straight toward a steep cliff. It fell into the river. The girl, frightened, ran in the same direction or wanted to get closer to see where her favorite toy had fallen. She leaned down from the cliff, but she couldn't hold on. "Did you hear that?" Miranda became alarmed. What surprised, the guys looked at her, as if something had fallen into the water splash. And then it hit the girl, and she began to look around. Maria shouted, "Where is your daughter?" The mother looked around. Maybe she ran away. Where? She did not run away. She jumped up and shouted to Miranda. She fell in the water. "I told you I heard a splash." The whole company rushed as fast as they could to the precipice. But there was only a ball floating in the water. Anna, my daughter," Maria shouted from the shore. "Somebody save her. I can't swim." She looked at the boys with pleading and despair, but they only held up their hands. They said that it was dangerous here. They did not get out of there, and they had no desire to drown with the girl. Maria screamed and rushed from side to side. Suddenly, someone darted past them and jumped into the water. "Mike, don't." Just then, they heard a scream behind them. Maria looked back and saw the very same Molly standing there, terrified, clutching her husband's shirt tightly with one hand and her son's palm with the other. She and her husband had not had time to get very far. And hearing Maria's screams, Mike did not hesitate to rush to the rescue. Molly and her son went to the edge of the cliff. It seemed as if time stood still. The boy was the first to lose his temper and called out for his father, whimpering. Molly held on as best she could. Maria also tried to hold herself together. She stared at the water and whispered like a prayer. Just one word. "Please, please." Suddenly, Anna's head appeared on the surface of the water. The girl had her eyes closed. She was unconscious, and Mike dived out behind her. The boys carefully went down to the water, went as deep as the bottom would allow, but they could not reach the girl. Mike ducked and dived, and then came up again and again. It was clear he wasn't strong enough. He dived out again. He pushed Anna as hard as he could in the direction of the guys and went under the water. Anna was very pale. Miranda started giving her CPR. Maria bustled around them. The guys sat on the shore at a distance and watched the process. And no one paid any attention to the impending Molly, who understood that her husband would no longer be able to swim out. But she kept staring at the water. Suddenly, Anna coughed and opened her eyes, crying. Maria exhaled, grabbed her daughter in her arms, and pressed her to herself as hard as she could. And just now, everyone remembered about Molly. What about her husband? Maria whispered. One of the guys shook his head and lowered his eyes and said quietly, "He couldn't do it. Apparently he wasn't strong enough. We have to call in all sorts of services, whoever we call in." And he looked at his friend, who told him to call an ambulance and the cops, I guess. "Are you crazy?" Maria looked at them in horror. "What cops? Then everyone would know." "What will find out the whole company?" They understandably stared at his mother. "Well, how what?" "My husband will know that we were here, and then I'll be ruined." "What do you want to do?" "I'll call a cab and leave. I don't want that kind of fame." "Maria, are you out of your mind?" Miranda screamed. "This guy actually saved your daughter at the cost of his own life. Look." She pointed her finger at the woman with the child. "It is, I dare say, his son, and now he's fabulous. Because you didn't take care of your daughter, and you call a cab. But I'm grateful to him for that." Maria cut him off. "But my husband must not know anything about it. Don't you understand, Miranda?" Grief-stricken. Molly didn't even notice Maria leaving the scene in a cab with her daughter. She was waiting for Mike to come out. When the police arrived, she begged them to get her husband out, and then she sank down on the sand beside her son and said, "Don't cry, baby. Daddy probably dredged up somewhere else. We'll come home now, and he's probably already there." The boy calmed down in a jiffy and started rushing his mother home. Molly herself believed what she whispered to her son. She really wanted it to be so. The woman didn't want to believe that she was alone. After all, she simply could not survive without her Mike. The police tried to send the woman home, but she stubbornly stayed on the beach waiting for the search to end. And then one of the police rudely said, "Mother, you think of yourself if you do not think about the child. The divers are looking as soon as they find it. We'll let you know right away." But the boy shouldn't look at his father's corpse, Seika Saiki. It was as if the woman had woken up from her dream. She looked at her son. The boy wasn't crying. He was hugging his mother with his whole body, staring at the water. She took the child away and returned a couple of hours later, leaving her son with his mother. But no one was found that day, and the next day neither. Mike's body was found by fishermen a few kilometers from the scene. When did it resurface on its own? Maria had been a very model wife since that day. Every day when William left for work, she would call Miranda to see how the search for the drowning was going. The police were aware that the man had drowned while rescuing a child. But the rescued girl's mother left early, not wanting the publicity. Well, that was her right. No one can force gratitude. But Maria was still scared. Every time she met her husband from work, she scrutinized his face to see if he knew anything. On the one hand, she knew she was at fault on all sides. Yes, she shouldn't have gone to the wild beach. Yes, she shouldn't have been drinking. But if he hadn't kept her in a golden cage with the baby, had given her time to rest, things might have been different, and perhaps the tragedy would have been avoided. It turns out that it was all William's fault. She didn't really want to have the baby. It's clear, of course, that he won't accept these excuses. I wonder what he'd do if he knew the truth. Yes, he would divorce her on the same day and take away her daughter. Of that the girl was 100% sure. Maria stuck it out. So everybody needs to pull themselves together, stop thinking about the bad things. No one would ever find out anything. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the car passing by. Her husband was very thoughtful and silent today. And at dinner, Maria couldn't stand it. Did something happen to you? Problems at work? Are you thinking about something strange all the time? No, he shook his head. I just heard a story today, and I can't get it out of my head. 4 days ago, a man drowned on a wild beach. It's a steep cliff and a pond. In a word, it's a very dangerous place. They just found him today. Can you imagine? Have you heard anything about it? And he looked intently at Maria. She shook her head negatively. No, it's the first I've heard from you. Well, he drowned, it happens. He wasn't the first. He must have been drunk. No, that's the point. He drowned saving someone else's child. He's a hero, That's what I think I could do. I'd give my life for my own. That's understandable. I wouldn't even consider it. But for somebody else's child, could I give my life? With these words, William looked at his daughter. I can't answer that question for myself. It turns out I couldn't. In a word, I admire the guy. Maria sat there without making a sound. She was afraid to even breathe. She wanted to change the subject, but William wouldn't let her. You know what the wildest thing about this story is? That Maria almost rumbled, guessing what William was about to tell. The rescued girl's mother ran off the beach right after the man drowned. You see, she didn't even wait for the rescuers. She didn't care. She didn't say thank you to his wife, who, by the way, was also on the beach and saw everything. The woman just ran away. All they know is that she got drunk and didn't watch the baby at all. And it's all her fault. William. But I don't think there's any need to judge anybody. It's not like we weren't there, and we can't know the details. Whether she was drunk or not, Maria said. You never know what happens in life. No, Maria, I'm judging. William said with a challenge. What kind of mother is that? Not only did she take the child to the wild beach, but she didn't keep an eye on him. How can you do that? I think she's one of those. He paused, searching for the right word. The unfortunate ones. Probably single, knocked up by some bimbo who didn't know who. She wants to have fun, so she drags her kid everywhere with her. Normal mothers don't act like that. And this man's got a family left. He's got a little boy. They say they could barely make ends meet, and now they don't know how they're going to live. Because of this, God forbid. Maria saw that William was talking more and more. Now she was afraid to imagine what he would do if he knew that God forbid was sitting in front of him. William, how would you feel about you and me taking a trip somewhere? She blurted out. The first thing that came to mind. The man stared at her in surprise. No, what? We didn't have a wedding trip. Let's take a rare trip to the sea. You rest. Otherwise, you are a nervous kind. He nodded in agreement. Yes, maybe tomorrow I can go to work to sort out the most important things. And I'll buy tickets. The next day, Maria wasn't herself. She was worried that their trip would not be ruined. They had to get out of town until things calmed down. Maria called her husband at lunchtime and asked if things were going well for him after he assured her that everything was fine. She hung up and exhaled. And after lunch, the home helper reported that some woman had come to see her. Miranda must have come, Maria thought, and walked briskly to the gate, but opened it. She was at a loss for words. Before her stood Molly. How did you find me? Maria asked quietly. One of the boys is a classmate of mine. He told me your address. In a weak voice, Molly answered. Her staggered black circles under her weeping eyes. It was obvious that she hadn't slept in a long time. But Maria didn't care about that, and Molly pissed her off. Why had she come to her house? What did she want with her? No thanks to her husband, or to ruin her life. What do you want? Maria asked, trying not to make eye contact, but Molly paid no attention to her tone. I don't know if you know this or not, but they found Mike yesterday. I mean his body. Now we have to bury him, and there's no money. We're in debt. Mike's been sick for a long time. We've been borrowing. And now she's overwhelmed and wiped away a tear. Now it's a funeral. What's it to me? Maria was being blatantly rude. What do you want from me? Molly looked at her and whispered, I thought you would help me with money. I will give every penny of it. It is true, not at once, but in time I can pay it all back. So you've come to beg for money, like payment for your daughter's life, huh? You really think just because he took a dive for my daughter, I owe your whole family some serious money? Maria was falling apart big time. I didn't ask him to, by the way. It was his decision. He didn't calculate his strength. So in the end, how did it turn out? I had nothing to do with it. And don't make it my fault. All right. Don't go, stay there. Sorry, she went into the house and came back a few minutes later. He put some crumpled bills in Molly's hands, all that he had, and didn't come here again, not shifting his problems from bad to worse. He took the plunge and drowned himself. I didn't push him. Molly was so shocked, she couldn't even find the words. She hadn't expected such a reaction from the mother of the rescued girl. If someone had saved her son, she would have given it all to that man, and she would have kissed his feet for the rest of her life. And here is such disregard. She raised her head, and without even looking at the denomination of the banknotes clutched in her hand, she threw them in Maria's face as hard as she could. How vile you are. Choke on your money, benefactress. You know, the worst thing is, knowing your husband, he would have saved your daughter no matter what, even if he had known your vile nature beforehand. I, on the other hand, if I could rewind time, I wouldn't have let him jump. I would have hung like a stone around his neck, but I didn't. Molly turned around and with quick strides, walked away, and Maria, looking around, gathered up the bills and made sure no one had seen the scene. Quickly, she closed the gate. A couple of days later, Mike's funeral was held. A lot of people came, mostly strangers. The news of the tragedy quickly spread through the village, and people came to bid farewell to the hero. Contrary to Molly's expectations, the funeral was very dignified. Many concerned people, learning about the widow's plight in advance, issued a petition, and people began to bring the widow money, as much as they could, but as the saying goes, by the thread. Molly could not believe what was happening. To say that she was grateful to them, it was nothing to say, but she had to move on with her life. She spent the first year in a fog. The only thing that kept her going was the thought of her son Nick growing up. He went to school. Molly worked day and night, taking on an extra job as a nurse. She had to slowly pay back the debts she had accrued while her husband was still alive, pay the mortgage, and still have something to live on. My mother helped me out a lot, often taking my grandson with her. When Nick was 9 in the hospital where Molly worked, a patient came in with an attack of appendicitis. He was much older than Molly, but when he recovered, he began to give her signs of attention. The woman waved him off at first, then decided, why not? You can always try a new relationship. The man, a courteous, handsome divorcee, says he loves children, And her son, oh, how it is not enough male attention. Was the new beau's name David? Molly introduced him to her son. She was very worried for the first time since Mike's death, inviting the man home. But all fears were in vain. Nick and David quickly found common ground. The boy told his guest about his hobbies, his studies, and he listened attentively, asked questions, and nodded in agreement. Molly sighed in relief. If things worked out with David, then so be it. They would have a strong male shoulder to lean on. Nick would have a father, and she would finally be able to stop working around the clock. A month later, they moved into David's apartment. It was a spacious 3-bedroom, and Nick finally had his own room. David was very kind, helpful, and Molly couldn't believe men like that existed. And as she realized later, the right thing to do. After a while, she began to notice that David was increasingly irritable, and it was Nick who pissed him off. No, the boy wasn't doing anything special. It was just pissing the man off with his presence. The boy, on the other hand, was reaching out to his stepfather. Once he even called him Daddy. The man answered, "Don't call me that. What kind of a father am I to you? Just call me Uncle David." Nick immediately lost his temper, pulled away from him, and did not want to tell him anything else. But David wasn't the least bit upset. Molly was worried. I don't know what the right thing to do is. One incident put everything in its place. One day she came home from work, and from the threshold she heard her son crying. Without developing, she ran into the room and saw him standing in the corner. His back and legs were streaked with red, and a soldier's belt was lying on the floor not far away. David lounged imposingly in an armchair and smirked and said, "Come here, will you listen to what your son has done?" But Molly was not going to listen to anything. Seeing the crying baby, she was seized by rage. She grabbed the very belt and began to whip David with it. Of course, the woman did not succeed in punishing him properly, but she hit him a couple of times. When he calmed down Molly and took away the belt, he shouted, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? The boy would be better brought up. Grew up lazy. My father whipped me when I was a kid. That's how I grew up to be a man. And then he got a couple of times and he's whining." Standing for the second hour, Molly dropped the decision, turned to her son. "Pack up, Nick. We're going back to our place." After that, she put a big fat cross on her personal life. She realized that no one else's children were needed. And worrying all the time. Isn't another of her new husbands hurting the baby? While Molly was at work, the woman didn't want any more. David came a couple of times, persuaded her to come back. He said he made a mistake, and now he reconsidered everything and will behave differently. But Molly was adamant. For David, she developed a strong sense of disgust. Gradually, he stopped trying. She was working around the clock again, but it was easier now that her son was trying to be independent. He stayed home alone, did his homework, and cooked his own food. Molly was no longer worried about her boy. One day, on her way back from her shift, she felt dizzy and sat down on the bench to recover a little. It must have been the effects of the rash and overwork that took its toll. She sat down and drank some water. She already wanted to go further. A huge white car that stopped not far from her caught her eye. At the man who got out of it, Molly did not even pay attention. But when the door on the passenger side opened and a woman appeared, Molly flinched. She recognized her even in the 1,000th crowd. It was Maria. She looked gorgeous, of course. A man helped a girl in a beautiful dress out of the salon. She looked about 7 years old, and the woman realized that this was the same girl who had been rescued by her husband a few years ago. The father and daughter laughed, discussed something, and Maria followed them with a disgruntled face. The family walked into the mall, and Molly remained seated on the bench. Maria, she hated with all her soul, and as much as Molly didn't want to admit it. Neither did the girl. After all, if it weren't for them, her Nick would be living with a full family right now. She immediately remembered her Mike, and the woman's eyes filled with tears. How did she love him? He was probably the only man she could love in her life. Maria, on the other hand, was very unhappy. William announced today that he had the day off and the family was in for a surprise. Maria already believed they would go to a restaurant, but instead he took everyone to the mall to update his daughter's closet. Then the plan was to go to the toy store and the ice cream cafe, which Anna just adored. Anna, 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 everything for the daughter. As if Maria was nothing. William enjoyed spoiling his daughter, and Maria was glad her husband had accepted not having a second child. William had wanted a son very much and had insisted for a long time on having one. But Maria wasn't going to have another baby. She had long pretended to suffer, as no matter how much effort they made, the long-awaited pregnancy would not come, and she herself took the pill secretly from her husband. Then she realized that William wasn't going to let it go. The woman decided to cheat, arranged with his gynecologist, and he, for a tidy sum of money, concocted a conclusion that Maria, due to certain circumstances, could never become a mother. And then one day, when William returned from work, he found his wife all in tears. The actress, it must be noted, Maria was beautiful, asked what had happened. Maria, with a trembling hand, handed him a document. He looked at it and said, "Explain yourself what it says." "I am not familiar with medical terms." You see, Maria began periodically sobbing. When our numerous attempts ended in failure, I decided to undergo a full examination at the clinic, and the doctors concluded that I could never become a mother. You know, God, how I wanted a second baby. And now what? And she forgot more than ever. William stood there, not knowing what to answer. "Maria," he began, "but why don't we go to another clinic? Let's go to a foreign clinic. Maybe the doctors made a mistake. You do not understand anything at all." Maria jumped up as Molly did. "You only think of yourself. You have no idea what it's like for a young, healthy woman to be told that she's incomplete and will never, you hear me, never be able to be a mother. And now you want me to go through it a second time and listen to everything again. And then maybe a third, fifth, 10th. Sure, go ahead. I'm not a human being, I'm just an incubator for you to nurture your children. And if it's broken, you can always find another one. So it turns out that let's get a divorce if the way I am doesn't suit you anymore." Maria knew she was overreacting, but there was no way out. If she slacked off now, he would drag her all over the clinics. And then her first plan would collapse like a house of cards, and she wasn't going to give birth. Only Anna was out of her arms, and more or less independent. And Maria sighed freely. And now it's all over again. Oh no, William realized his wife was on edge, so he hugged her and pressed her against him not to trust her. To her, he had no reason to. The man understood that no woman in her right mind would attribute such diagnosis to herself for nothing. "Don't worry, honey," he whispered. "We'll manage. We have Anna, our sunshine. One child means one. And you're not an incubator, you're my beloved wife. And I'm certainly not going to leave you." He whispered many more tender and affectionate words to her, and did not see Maria smile victoriously. When everything in the family got better, Maria realized that her personal life urgently needed to diversify. Her mild flirtation with a fitness trainer had recently turned into a full-fledged relationship, and she plunged headlong into it. Starting this relationship, Maria had a lot of trepidation. It was her first time cheating on her husband. Then again, what did he want? William is gone all day at work, and Maria is a young and beautiful woman. She gets the attention of men. So life settles down and runs its course. Maria was in a bad mood today. Once again, a meeting with a young lover broke down, so William asked his wife to take her daughter to get a new smartphone. Why would she want to go? The girl's old enough, dating boys. She'd be fine on her own. But she couldn't refuse her husband. Before Maria left the house, she took a fleeting glance in the mirror. It looks great, as one might assume, her real age. There she was, such a young beauty. The woman was in a hurry, seeing that her daughter was already waiting for her in the car with William's driver. After all, this development will do the trick. She might as well go alone. Though where could she go without money? When she arrived at the store, Maria immediately noticed the salesman who approached them. The guy was talking, and Maria admired him. How young and handsome he was, but really, really handsome. His wavy black hair was styled in a fashionable hairstyle. And his eyes? The kind of eyes you only see in movies. They seemed to radiate light, but it hadn't escaped her notice that Anna had also taken an interest in him. Thank you, Maria thanked him while he was packing. You have explained everything so beautifully. It is rare to find such knowledgeable salesmen. We will only come to you next time. Yes, I will be happy to, he said, keeping his eyes on Anna. The girl modestly lowered her eyes, took the bag and went out of the store. Her mother followed her, and when she returned home, Maria exclaimed, Anna, how forgetful we are. We bought a phone, but we didn't take anything, no headphones, nothing. I'm going back to the store now. I'll buy everything. My God, how could we do this? Mom, calm down, said Anna sharply. Don't take me for a fool. Do you really think I can't see anything? I understand why you have to come back to the store. And you're certainly not thinking of me. Stop ruffling your old feathers in front of the young boys. Poor father. How many years have you been giving him horns? I'm ashamed to invite my friends over because if one of them is prettier, you're already there. You sound like you're talking to your mother, Maria. So you behave like a mother should. What kind of example are you setting for me? Stop talking nonsense, shouted Maria. You know that saying, the eggs don't teach the hen. Who do you think you are? So that I never hear anything like that again, in a more peaceful tone, said Anna. But on the condition that you don't go into that store to wag your tail at that young salesman again. Otherwise you're thinking of leaving me conditions, Maria interrupted her. Otherwise, the daughter continued, not paying attention to her mother's shouting. I will tell everything to father, or I will build it so that he will catch you himself, so to speak, at the scene of the crime. I love Daddy very much, and I'm keeping quiet, not because I can't see anything, but because I feel sorry for him. He doesn't deserve a wife like you. Anna was shaking with anger and indignation. She had wanted to tell her mother everything for a long time, because the behavior of this grown woman was outrageous. She did not listen to her mother's shouting. She silently turned around and went out. In the yard, she called her friend. She had recently turned 18, and her parents gave her a brand new car for her birthday. Emily, hi. Aren't you busy right now? Let's go. Let's go to a place. An hour later, the girls were sitting in the car, staring intently at the huge glass doors of the store, where Anna had recently bought her smartphone. Before the store closed, for another half an hour, Anna grumbled unhappily to Emily. Are we just going to hang around here? Come on, let's go inside. Let's see you're handsome. No, frightened the elite. I've only been here recently. He'll know I'm here on purpose. Naturally. And how are you going to meet him? And what are you going to do with Jacob? I thought you two were dating. Do you think he's going to stand aside like that? If you tell him you like someone else. Jacob's not an easy guy, and he's very vindictive, by the way. I don't think he'd take a thing like that. Oh, Jacob. I'll think about it later. It's a little early. I don't know. Am I gonna get anywhere with this guy or not? Maybe he has a girlfriend. When has that ever stopped you? Emily smirked. Half an hour later, the store employees began to go home. In the crowd, Anna almost spotted the tall guy, who was walking out in the company of female employees. There he is. Anna shouted sharply, pointing a finger at the windshield, start the car. Emily, let's go after him. What are we going to follow him? Surprised her friend. No, okay, what do you say? It's not hard for me to see him now. I can, of course, but from the looks of it, the guy is in demand among the female sex. Look at the crowd of girls following him. Nick reached the corner with his coworkers, and there they said goodbye, running to the bus stop. He didn't notice cars were following him. He thought about the same girl shopper he'd met at the store today. Her mom is a little strange, of course, but they reek of affluence. For a smartphone like the one they bought, you have to save up for a few years to get one. And for them, it's probably nothing. Nick sighed, as if he did not like the girl, but where does he a simple salesman before her? That evening, Anna and her friend saw the boy home. But she didn't have the courage to get to know him. She did not want it to look as if she was hanging herself on him. She should have thought of every detail. The next day, she went to the store under the pretense of picking up headphones and a case for her phone. She was in luck. Nick was at work. Mom, are you home? I'm here, shouted Nick as he entered the apartment. Molly, who had just recently returned from her shift, had already cooked a fragrant pie for her son. My hands, son. She peeked out of the kitchen. We're about to have dinner. It smells so good. Clutched the boy to tend to the table. And when do you have time to do everything, Mom? Several times I told you are so tired. Come home from work, get some rest. I'm able to cook dinner for both of us myself. It's no trouble at all. Molly waved her hand. She sat down across from him and feasted her hand on a pike. Come on, tell me about your day. What's new? You know, Mom, I met such a girl today. She was buying a phone from me yesterday with her mother, and today she went back to him. We got to talking. You know, she's just so cool. Anyway, I thought a girl like that would never pay attention to me. But she hinted that she wouldn't mind meeting me. Tomorrow is my day off, and I'm going to see her. Anna, I just don't know where I should take her. Apparently, the girl is from a very wealthy family. What can I offer her? A movie or a cafe? Molly, who felt sick to her stomach at the mention of her name, didn't make a big deal of it. I'll tell you what, Sonny, if a girl really likes you, she'll be happy to go to a cafe or just walk around the park with you. But I don't trust those well-to-do ones. Why do they need simple workers? Like us, and you need to choose an easier girl. But of course, that's up to you. Tell me how you're getting on with your studies, and when's the next session? Nick finished 11th grade well, and he had a great desire to get a higher education, but Molly couldn't afford it. They both understood. Then the guy made a decision on his own. Right after school, he got a job as a salesman, and after saving some money, he enrolled in correspondence courses. I'll pay my own tuition, he said. I'll work and study by correspondence. That's okay. You're already working your butt off to provide for us. That's enough now. We'll get by now. Give up your nursing job. Molly stubbornly refused. The woman felt guilty all her life. They could barely make ends meet and no savings. Her son was going to get married, and there was nothing to get married for. What is there to say? She couldn't even pay for his education. The next day, Nick and Anna met in the city. The guy was a little embarrassed to see the girl in a movie. What else could he offer this spoiled beauty? And Anna didn't care with this guy. She was ready to just walk around the city, holding hands. Just the sight of his expressive eyes made the girl blow her head off. For the first time in her life, she had fallen in love so completely. It seemed that she was ready to go to the ends of the earth for Nick. The relationship spiraled rapidly. Anna immediately after school, studying in the 11th grade, halfway across the city raced to a familiar store just to see Nick and have a few words with him. The first day Anna went on a date with Nick, she turned her current boyfriend Jacob away. Jacob was a 19-year-old high school kid in a cool car and was totally unprepared for this turn of events to be turned around and blown off. How could she? Usually girls chased him, and he dumps them. And that's where Jacob's surprised ego came into play. Girlfriend Anna Molly kept silent like a partisan and did not want to explain to him the reason for such a drastic break in the relationship. Then Jacob decided to track down his ex-girlfriend himself. It turned out to be quite easy. Jacob only had to drive up to the school. And there she was, Anna rushing to the bus stop. Where was she going? She was going in the opposite direction from her house. When Jacob realized the reason for the breakup was another guy, he was furious. How could Anna trade him for some salesman? A regular LOSHA guy, and Jacob's sneakers alone cost more than all his clothes. On this salesman, yes, and most likely what all of his stuff is in. Jacob couldn't leave it all like that, just as Anna herself once did. He waited until the end of Nick's workday, and when he came out of the store, he approached him with a waltzing gait. There is a conversation. Nick, with a perplexed shrug, followed the major to his car. Jacob, approaching his car, enriched it and defiantly covered it with his keys. Threateningly, he looked Nick in the eye. Anna, you know. Well, she's mine. After these words, Nick immediately realized who was in front of him. Anna was telling him about her ex-boyfriend, whom she had dated non-seriously out of boredom and broke up with as soon as she met Nick. As far as I know, the ex-girlfriend smiled at Nick. You broke up and now she's dating me. That's what she thinks we broke up, but that's not for her to decide. I, let's say, didn't break up with her. The truth is, Anna is just mad at me, so she decided to involve you to make me jealous. When she cools down, things will get better between us. I don't think so. Nick smiled. Don't you understand me? If I ever see you around again, there won't be anything left of you. You can start now. What's stopping you? I'm telling you right now, I'm not giving up on Anna. And you're a greyhound. Well, let's see. Jacob got up and looked at his opponent with an appraising eye. Yeah, I think he's going to lose to this guy in a direct confrontation. Nick was taller and taller in the shoulders. And judging by his gait, he was no stranger to sports. Jacob's favorite hangouts were hookahs and clubs. Anyway, I warned you, drawing conclusions. Jacob gritted his teeth, retreating to the driver's side door. And I don't throw words to the wind. If I see you again with Anna, you will regret that you were born. But that's if you stay alive. Who's got threats? Nick laughed. I repeat, I will not refuse either. These words he said as the car drove away, and Jacob, seething with anger, was sitting in it. He was used to the fact that everything in life was easy for him because of his father's money. And people were always doggedly in front of him, seeing the expensive clothes and the cool car. But those people are smart, Jacob thought, and this one must be a fool. And fools are taught. Let them try not to listen to me. And it wasn't that Jacob needed Anna so much. No, he had plenty of girls like that. But his ego was hurt, and it called for action. After a couple of days, Jacob was convinced that this salesman didn't understand him and continued to date Anna. Jacob sat in his car and watched them walk down the street holding hands. Anna was laughing, and Jacob was seething with anger inside. The guy already knew what he was going to do. Looking away from the couple that annoyed him, he called one of his acquaintances. Alex, hello, I have business with you. You've got the contacts of those scumbags, don't you? Yeah, the GOP gang that provides certain services. For money, of course. Look, I have a well-paying job for them. What do you care? I got to teach a sucker a good lesson. Jacob was following Nick down a dark street in his car. Nick had just escorted Anna home and walked back, since there were no more buses. In view of the late hour, the beggars couldn't even call themselves a cab. Jacob started everyone, driving slowly. Jacob waited for the moment when Nick went into the prison alley. In addition to the driver, there were 4 big, pumped-up gangster-looking guys sitting in the car. These guys were doing some favors, and they were reputed to be total badasses. And we'll be following him around for a long time, one of the jocks grumbled. He'll get the right place now and slow down. We'll process him there. But let's talk terms right away, how we're going to take the guy down. No, we don't have to go through with it, Jacob worried. Break his legs, that's all. So he could spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Done, said the jock, pulling the balaclava over his face. Keep in mind, if this guy points you out, forget about us. When they get you in one place, you better not think about us. I can't be taken by one place. Jacob pronounced pathosally. Do you know who my father is? We have. The jock gritted his teeth. All right, the customer's off. Pull over. Nick walked home happy, thinking of Anna, how much he liked this girl. At first he thought Anna was a major, but she turned out to be not at all spoiled with money and very easy to talk to. At least in front of Nick, the girl never boasted of her wealth and was happy to go to the movies with Nick. She walked around the city, visited inexpensive cafes, and even though Nick clearly felt their social inequality, somewhere in the back of his mind, he had a hope that everything could work out between them. After all, the young people did not want to part at night. Reflecting Nick, his steps with a slight smile on his lips, when out of the darkness towards him stepped a big guy with a bat in his hands. His face was not visible. As it turned out later, it wasn't just because of the darkness. It was because he was wearing a balaclava. At first, Nick wasn't even worried. He thought he was just confused with someone else. But then a man's voice sounded behind him, which was vaguely familiar. What now from seeing you? And I promised you. Abruptly turning around, Nick caught a glimpse of the speaker. It turned out to be Anna's ex-boyfriend. Threatened him a few days ago. Don't say I didn't warn you. Jacob smirked. And as you can see, I kept my word. Anastasia was working the night shift, and it seemed to be business as usual. Only Nick didn't answer her calls for some reason. This made the woman a little nervous. Her son called back after a while. This always happened. Molly comforted herself with these thoughts, that Nick might be sound asleep. On my life after hours, he still manages to go out after work with this new girl of his. Molly disapproved of their relationship, learning that the girl was from a wealthy family. The woman believed that but it was up to him to figure it out. Molly was especially worried. It was still early in the morning, but Nick was usually up for work. So not only did he not call back, but his phone remained unavailable. The woman had barely waited until the end of her shift and was about to rush home with all her might. When Molly called her and from the doorstep, "Molly, will you throw the case histories to the emergency room on the way?" "Yes, of course," the woman nodded, grabbing the papers for me. She went down in the elevator, and her heart clenched with a bad feeling. Already recovering to the exit, she thought and rushed to the waiting room. There, at that moment, a patient was being brought in on a stretcher with an ambulance. Imagine, a very young guy, they found, as she began to match him. I don't know how long he lay there. He was severely beaten. Of course, he had to go straight to the intensive care unit, the paramedic in the ambulance said. To the nurses at the emergency room. Molly herself did not understand what force made her approach the stretcher and look into the face of the beaten man. Her heart stopped beating, and a veil covered her eyes. The woman collapsed in front of the stretcher. What was the matter with her? The paramedic was surprised. "It's the nurse from surgery, isn't she?" "Yeah, that's Molly." She looked at the guy and immediately fell over. Maybe she knew him. What if it's God? She told me she had a son that age. God forbid. Molly came to her senses lying on the couch, where the nurses had moved her. She remembered everything at once. The guy the ambulance brought in, he's in the ICU. "Molly, you know him." She jumped up, didn't answer, and rushed out of the emergency room. Apparently, I was right. "It's her son," the nurse mumbled. What a mess. Even though Molly was a nurse in the ICU, they wouldn't let her in, no matter how hard she tried. "We will do everything we can to help your son, and you do not need to see him now. Believe me, there's nothing you can do to help him. Here, take his things for now." The doctor shoved a bag of clothes in one hand to the woman, and in the other turned off Nick's phone. Molly accepted it mechanically and inadvertently pressed the power button. The phone hummed merrily. On the screensaver, Nick appeared to have his cheek pressed against the girl's cheek. There she is, his Anna, Molly thought. How much my son told me about her, but he never showed me her picture. Then numerous messages from the social networks from Anna came up on the screen. "Nick, where are you? Where did you disappear to? Why aren't you answering? Nick, can you hear me? Nick, I'm tired of calling you. What's wrong?" Molly clicked on one of those messages and ended up on the girl's page. What interesting status does she have? My favorite, the best in the world. Is that what Nick wrote? Swallowing her tears, thought Molly. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she really does love him. I would have to let her know what happened. But later, when Nick comes to his senses, and Nick has to come to his senses, or I have no reason to go on living. My whole purpose in life is for my son. I'd already lost my beloved husband once, but now there was Nick, and there was something to live for. And Anna, apparently, saw that Nick was online and set up a bunch of new messages urging her to respond. Molly's screen glittered, and they flashed pictures of Anna. Here she is in her home. Yes, this girl is not one of the poor. Yes, and here she is, apparently, with her parents. Molly drank her eyes into Anna's mother's face. The phone fell out of her hands. The woman slowly slid down the wall, passing out for the second time that day. And Maria and her husband were eating dinner. It was one of those rare evenings when William came home early, and Maria herself had no plans. The couple ate in silence. It had been a long time since they had a common topic of conversation. Maria was not anxious to know how her husband was doing at work, and he was not interested in how his wife spent her time. The only thing they had in common was their daughter. After a long silence, William asked his wife a question. "I see her so rarely lately, where she disappears." "There is no way of knowing," Maria shrugged. "She does not report to me. Probably with a guy." "What boyfriend?" "Jacob." You're out of touch, aren't you? Maria snorted. Our daughter broke up with Jacob. She's got another boyfriend of her heart now. And according to Anna, she seems to be going through a bit of a breakdown, and she's been very jumpy these days. Look, Maria, you stay home. You don't have any contact with your daughter. She never asks you anything. You never know where she is, what she is doing. I understand that she is a big girl, but not so big that you have to stop controlling her completely. And she lets herself be controlled. Maria exclaimed indignantly. Anna, like a prickly hedgehog, snaps back. If you ask her anything, well, she only snaps at you. And that's not understandable either. I mean, you're her mother. You're supposed to be close, but you're the opposite. William didn't have time to finish his sentence before distraught Anna burst into the dining room and started shouting at her mother. Mother, what happened on the river 15 years ago? Telling me immediately. Anna, are you out of your mind? Frowned William. Why do you allow yourself to yell at your mother? And what happened to you anyway? What kind of look? Did you have a fight with someone? William noticed a bright red scratch on his daughter's cheek. I wasn't in a fight. Dad, a complete stranger wanted to beat me up. Anna flopped down sharply in her chair and grabbed a glass of water from the table, beginning to drink greedily. A frowning William looked at his daughter and waited for her to finally get drunk and explain what had happened. Dad, I'll tell you everything from the beginning, so you'll understand, said the girl, seeing her father's tense gaze. I'm dating a guy right now. His name is Nick. He's a nice guy. He's very nice. He's a part-time college student, but he's working so he can help his mom. She raised him on her own. Nick has always spoken only warmly of his mother. I love Nick. I really do. It's not a childhood crush anymore. Don't think about it. And then 3 days ago, he disappeared. He stopped contacting me. I couldn't breathe at the thought that he might have left me. I really couldn't breathe without him, you know? Every day I went to the store where he works, but the employees didn't know anything. Nick just disappeared, just didn't show up for work. It wasn't until today that one of the sales girls found out what really happened to him. He was beaten in the street, and he's still in intensive care. I found out what hospital he was in, and I ran over there, and his mom was there. Dad, can you imagine what I saw? She jumped me right in the hospital corridor. At first, I thought the woman was crazy. She wanted to scratch my eyes out. I couldn't understand how someone who had never seen me could throw herself at me with such hatred. But she didn't do it silently. She was screaming that I was a curse on her whole life. That 15 years ago, she had lost her beloved husband, Nick's father, because of me. And now Nick was beaten up and again because of me. When this woman was dragged away from me by the nurses, I started screaming too. I told her you were crazy. I had never seen you before. What makes you think Nick was beaten up because of me? What's your husband got to do with anything? You know what she said? Ask your mother. Let her tell you. How 15 years ago my husband on the river gave his life for another man's child for you. Your mother was too drunk and too much fun to watch her own daughter. And then she told me to get out of the hospital and never go near her son again. And I love Nick Dad so much. I don't want to listen to her. I'm not going to break up with him. I don't know how badly he was beaten, but if he dies, I die with him. And now I ask you, Mother, so what happened on that river 15 years ago? And why does that woman hate me so much? Maria sat undead. She was sprawled out in her chair like a taut string, and the woman's eyes fluttered from her husband to her daughter. There was panic in them. Maria knew that what she had feared for so long had happened. She thought that time had passed, all forgotten, but no, it turned out that way. The truth came out. The woman rolled out a nervous chuckle. I don't know what you're talking about. Anna, it really is some kind of crazy. And I do not think so. He said, turning pale. William, I remember the story very well. There was a man drowned there, saving someone else's child. And why do I remember it? And because at the time I thought a lot about the selflessness of that man. I even gave his widow money as material assistance through others. But what makes her think that this child is you, Anna? She is clearly mistaken. Maybe you look like that girl. Maybe she's been indoctrinated by someone. Okay, William got up from the table. Now, you and I are going to go over there together and figure this thing out. Yes, 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 Papa, let's go, please. Anna shook her head. Tell me, is it not normal and that she is mistaken? And I want to see Nick. I want to find out what's wrong with her. Where are you going? You've already realized that this woman is not in her right mind. Apparently, she's just a little crazy because she's upset. Maria was silent. When she saw the suspicious and angry look her husband threw at her, and she realized that the seed of doubt had already been planted in him. Molly was sitting on the couch. Molly, what are you doing? The nurse she knew spoke with horror. Why are you attacking that girl like that? I thought you and all the hair. Is it really true? The same girl that made your Mike drown? Even if it wasn't her fault. Yes, it was. Molly exhaled faintly, who had begun to slow down a little under the sedatives. That girl got my son beaten up. I lost my husband because of him. I hate her and her mother. God, I hate them so much. Why? Why did they come across our way of life and become a curse on our family? All sideways, the nurse squeezed in and cautiously, looking at Molly, said, Hello, this. A man has arrived with the very girl you're beating here. Apparently it's her father, and he really wants to talk to you. They didn't let them into the squad room, of course. They're waiting for you downstairs in the visiting room. Let me tell them you're sick and you can't come out. The man's very solid. Probably wants to get you to answer for beating up his daughter. What do you think I'm afraid of? Molly jumped up. Yes, after what has happened to me in this life, I'm not afraid of anything or anyone. The worst has already happened. Nick is still alive. The nurse said shyly, Yes, my son is alive. And in order for him to live, I must keep him away from this family. She ran quickly past the nurse and the frightened nurse. No matter what she did again, the nurse muttered, in case there was a fight. Molly, it's ours, apparently, not himself. Will you be something crazy? The nurse sighed. I have worked with him for many years. I'll never forget what happened to her when her husband drowned. Then she was all over Nick. She lived for her son. And here we are again, and again because of this family. In fact, it was like some kind of fate. She came down to William, seemingly calm. They could not have known it was the sedatives they had given her. The medication was handed to Molly, some slowed down, but her eyes still sparkled with rage. Barely had she seen Anna, sitting on the hospital visitor's bench next to a respectable man. William intercepted that look and jumped out of his seat, loading his daughter with him. Your name is Molly, and you beat my daughter. I'm not going to return the favor. I think you acted in a state of shock. I understand it's because of a story that happened years ago on the river. But tell me, what makes you think that Anna is the girl who drowned? I think you are mistaken. Am I mistaken? Grinned Molly bitterly. Do you really think I saw a resemblance in Anna to that little child? Was that why you attacked her? No, I didn't. I recognized her mother, your Maria, I remembered for life. Why are you making a fool of me here? You can't not know that story. I know about that story, you're right. I even admired your husband. But I had no idea it happened to my little girl. And if you're right, my wife hid it from me. Tell me what happened then. What happened? Your Maria got drunk with her friend and 2 guys. She wasn't watching her daughter, and the girl fell off a cliff. Mike and I were on our way home. When the panic started, we heard your wife screaming. My husband didn't think twice and jumped for your baby. He knew about that whirlpool and warned me repeatedly not to go anywhere near it. But Mike consciously sacrificed himself for a chance to save someone else's life. Then I came to your house to ask for money for the funeral. It was very embarrassing, but there was no way out. I asked for a loan. But your wife treated me like a beggar and told me that no one asked my husband to jump. It was his own fault for drowning. Maria could not, so to speak, shrieked William. Yes, she's far from perfect, of course, but she's not that cynical. And I see you don't know at all who you live with, and don't know what goes on in your own house. How is it that you don't know that your child almost drowned? You, however, are a rotten family. Mike and I had a real one. We loved each other. And after he died, life became a struggle to survive. Your daughter is doing great. She's all grown up, beautiful, spoiled. And my son is in intensive care because of her. We don't know if he'll live. What do you mean, you don't know? Nick, what could die? Did Anna cry behind her father's back? Why because of me? Why do you blame me for everything? Yes, because your ex-boyfriend beat up Nick with the help of some scumbags. Jacob's his name. Nick regained consciousness. That's all he could tell you. Jacob did it. Jacob, are you sure? William wondered. I know his father well. A lot of people know his father, believe me. And the investigator's eyes flickered when he heard the last name. Then it was clear that your Jacob wouldn't be responsible for anything. It'll be great, William replied, looking intently into Molly's eyes. If he's guilty, he'll be responsible. And I give you my word. His father is powerful, of course, but I'm not the last man in this town either. I'll put all my strength into whoever answers and whoever else answers. And I'll see you again. William spoke the last words already on the move, resolutely directed to the door, dragging by the hand. I am resisting. And daughter Anna cried. Why? Why did you say Nick might not make it? She kept turning around on her knees. That was all the girl cared about at the moment. Maria, however, sat in the living room all tense and ready for the conversation to come. It seemed to her that she was ready. But after all, so many years had passed. She was young, silly. William should discount that. When her husband whirled into the house and already opened his mouth, ready to unleash the full force of his anger on his wife's head, she wouldn't let him do that. Beginning to speak first. Yes, I know you are aware of it. Yes, it was Anna. And she was the one who was drowning in the river. So, yes, I made the mistake of going to the river then. But that was a long time ago. I might have told you back then. But do you remember how you acted? How you blamed that mother? In your own words, God forgive me, not knowing it was me. And I was right, William said. I still think so. I think a lot worse of you. You've never been a normal mother. And I've put up with you all my life, just for my daughter. And then it turns out our daughter might not even be in this world if it wasn't for a stranger. All because of you. What are you talking about? Maria was boiling. He puts up with me, and I don't put up with him. Or do you think life with you is sugar? I'm never home before you. And how many times have we gone out together? I can count on my fingers. You think that's life. But as far as I know, you live life to the fullest. If you seriously believe that I don't suspect your lovers. Yeah, I just didn't care. Didn't care about you, Maria, about you and how you spend your time. The main thing is that you don't bother me and I don't divorce you so as not to traumatize Anna. Then there's your damn infertility. I would be a bastard to leave my sick wife with you. That's why I endured it. I haven't felt anything for you for a long time, and I don't care if you go out. But now that I found out that you almost killed the child, while lying to me and shitting in my soul, turn to you, widow. Such an asshole, Maria, that I do not want to see you anymore. You realize by now that this is the logical end to our family life. The woman was furious. We realize there's nothing we can do about it now, and William will divorce her anyway. She wanted to hurt him too, so be it. So get a divorce. But you know what I'm going to tell you. You're not a horny reindeer. You're also a dumb jackass. You said you lived behind me because of my infertility. There's no infertility. I didn't want to have a baby, babysit those little snot-nosed kids. And I didn't care that you wanted a son. So you had to make do with just a daughter. William looked at his wife and laughed unexpectedly. Do you think you have trampled me now? Don't hope so. I felt sorry for you, and I believed you. That's why I didn't leave you. But I wasn't going to give up my kids because of you. I have a second family that has 2 kids growing up. The oldest is 10 years old. And now I'm not even going to wait until I'm officially divorced from you. I'll bring them here right away, as soon as you leave home. And you leave today, and I'll talk to Anna. I don't think she'll want to leave with you. You are such a bad mother that your daughter will never support you. Maria was trying to put a good face on a bad game. Yes, and get a divorce. You've wanted to for a long time. I won't be alone either, and in a divorce, I'll take from you half of everything you have. No, you won't. Maria, you're gonna walk away with your butt naked. You assume, knowing all your cheating, that I haven't taken care of it for a long time. Unknowingly, you've already signed the papers and you get nothing in the divorce. This can't be true. Maria, you're a sneak. I didn't sign anything. And if you did, I'll hire a lawyer and he'll prove that you forged it all by deception. For the image of a lawyer, Maria, it takes good money to hire a good lawyer. Now think about it. Who's got more money, you or me? You know, slipping you papers to sign. I wasn't really planning on using them, just in case. Now I know it's a shame. It's even a little punishment for being such an asshole. Jacob was rocking out in the club to the beat, the sound of loud music, when two men in plainclothes approached him, quickly waving a crust in front of his eyes. One of them threw "You're arrested." Jacob was a little stoned. He began to laugh eerily. "I'm detained. Do you even know who you approached? Do you know who my father is?" We do. Threw one of the leaders rudely pushed Dmitri into the car on duty. We all know. All questions to the superiors. You should have seen the confusion on the guy's face when he realized that everything that was happening to him was not a prank. They were really taking him to the police station. Does he know who his father is? The next morning, a confused secretary dropped by William's office. "William, Jacob's father is here to see you. I told him you were busy." "Stand back," rudely pushed the girl, a fat and bald man in an expensive suit, bursting into the office. "Hello, William. I'll get right to the point. Are you aware that my son was detained yesterday? Can you imagine Jacob being detained right in the club?" "I know." Quietly, William nodded, making no attempt to stand up and extend his hand to a longtime acquaintance. "You know, yes," the man frowned. "And I thought it wasn't true. When I was told that the origins of this detention came from you. It's true. Your son beat the hell out of me. The kid will be held accountable for it." "Who said that?" The man got up in a huff. "Who is this guy?" "We had a fight over your daughter's girl, by the way, but that guy's nobody and I don't understand his name." "I mean, you got some kind of personal beef with me." "It's not personal. It's just that the guy's not a stranger to me." "I'll take that as a yes. Who is he to you? Is he so close to you that you'd fight with me over him? You have no idea how close." "I'm ready to fight if I have to." William got up from the table. "You know, as it happens, whoever has the most money is right. In this case, you lose. And I'm not doing anything illegal. Your son will only be responsible for what he did. And believe me, he'll go down. You want to see me? Believe me, I'll go all the way." Droplets of sweat appeared on the full man's bald face. He had known William for years and understood that he had once said he would go all the way, would do it. Oleg knew firsthand the stubbornness and integrity of the man, and the capabilities of William. He also understood. "William, well, what are you really? But we are the same with you do not know the first year. What is going to sit right away? Well, not such a serious act. Maybe get off with probation." "He won't," William said meaningfully, in the same calm tone. "As the court rules, so it will be. This time according to the law. Jacob isn't your only son. You think what it would be like for the other two if Daddy went bankrupt. Even so cut off William." At this very time in the hospital, Molly was sobbing under the ICU door. Recently, the doctor told her the terrible news that Nick's kidneys were failing and he needed a transplant. Of course, he will be put on a waiting list for a donor organ. But Molly has worked too long in medicine and knew very well what a chance to wait for that line. "Take mine, without hesitation," she shouted. The doctor nodded, as if he knew his mother's reaction beforehand. "Yes, it is possible, in principle. Let's have you undergo the necessary examinations. We'll make sure that your organ is suitable for transplantation." And then a couple of minutes ago, the doctor said that her kidney wasn't suitable. Molly recovered and tried to pull herself together. "No more crying. We have to find a solution. We have to do something. Nick has a score, and it can go on for hours. Who knows better than her? The woman." You wiped her wooden eyes and only then saw Anna peeking out from around the corner leading to the intensive care unit. "Brave fool," thought the woman. "Why did you come again? I did not explain everything to you so that you do not show your face here again. So shoot me down." Anna took a step from around the corner. "Beat me up, pull out all my hair, and I'll still come anyway. I've been standing here for a long time, and I heard your conversation with the doctor. Nick needs a kidney transplant and yours doesn't fit. Take mine. I'm ready." Molly looked intently at the roof excited and herself red-spotted girl. Fool, do you even realize what you're offering? It's not an easy operation. Anything can happen during organ donation. You could die, and even if it goes well, you'll only have one kidney. And that's not exactly a full life. Do you understand that? I'm not as stupid as you think, am I? I'm aware of all the risks, and even if I die, I agree. No, that's not the right word. I don't agree. I insist. I'm ready to rip that kidney out of me. If only Nick would live. When I think that he might not live, I don't want to live myself. Molly looked at Anna thoughtfully, as if she were seeing her for the first time. You silly girl. You don't understand anything. You're a minor, and you are not entitled to decide these things for yourself. Maybe, I admit, you really love my son, but I can't do anything about my dislike for you, I'm sorry. Anna ran out of the hospital like a scalded man and rushed onto the roadway, blocking the way of a yellow car with checkers. The cab driver braked sharply, almost pushing the girl standing on the road with his bumper. He jumped out and jumped at her with his fists. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Are you bored with your life? Go throw yourself off the bridge. I have nothing to do with sitting here for you. But Anna did not listen to him. She ran to the passenger door, opened it, and got into the car. Take me downtown. Urgently, I will not get out of the car. Take me downtown. Take me downtown. I think I have to go to the office. The cab driver was already cautiously looking at the inadequate passenger. Either she is crazy or something really happened to this girl. The man sat silently behind the wheel and abruptly turned the car around. William's secretary had only recently recovered from the visit of the man who had pushed her roughly. And then Anna already rushed to her father's door. Your father has no time at his meeting, only had time to shout after her secretary Anna flew into the office, and disregarding several solid men sitting at a long table, shouted, "Daddy, Daddy, you urgently need to give permission for me to become a kidney donor for Nick," so angrily stretched out William. I don't think I raised you, daughter, very well. You don't notice anything around you at all. You don't see people sitting around, and you're barging in. Go out to the waiting room and wait there. No, Daddy can't stand this case. And Nick might die. We're running out of time in hours, maybe minutes. Okay, I get it. Heavily, Dad sighed. He turned to his staff. Excuse me, could you leave us alone? Meeting adjourned, sorry. Family matters. Men got up and, throwing disapproving glances at the chief's ill-mannered daughter, left the office. Come on, Anna, I'm listening to you carefully. What happened? I was in the hospital. Nick's kidneys are failing. He needs an emergency transplant. His mom's kidney is no good. I'd have to wait in line, and he might not wait for it. You see, I'm young, healthy. I could easily live with one soil. But I'm a minor, and you have to sign a release. That's out of the question. Cut William off. Anna squealed. She screamed and screamed, not noticing how her father sat with his hand under his head and paid no attention to his daughter. He was thinking hard about something. Shut up, he finally said, raising his head. I already said you would not be a donor. It will be me, if, of course, my kidney is suitable. But for some reason, I think it will. Is that supposed to be right? Nick's father gave his life for you, and I'm only giving one kidney for his son's life. Maria had her daughter outside the school. This wasn't the first time the woman had done this. Not because she missed Anna. She needed the money. Of course, Maria did not leave her husband's house empty-handed, and she had money and jewelry in sufficient quantity. Except that she had moved in with a young and gluttonous lover. Voracious, not in terms of food, but in terms of needs. The guy was used to living large and was not going to die his appetites, especially now Maria was living in his territory, even though he had not asked her to. Maria ran out of money at lightning speed, and the young friend began to hint that he was not going to provide for a grown-up aunt. And they had no obligations. They only met for fun. Maria felt humiliated, but she had nowhere else to go. So she turned to her daughter for the first time. Anna quite predictably decided to stay with her father. Anna had money. Her father was never stingy when it came to his beloved daughter, and she had already given it to her mother several times. But money tended to run out quickly. Hi, Maria waved her hand from the open window of the car. which William graciously allowed her to pick up. "I missed you. Come on, get in the car." Anna sadly sighed, separated from her friends, with whom she came down from the school porch, and walked toward her mother's car. "I have no money," was the first phrase of the girl as soon as she sat down next to Maria. For some reason, my mother's lips immediately pouted about money. "What? I just can't come to my daughter. I told you that I missed you. Don't bullshit me. You never missed me. In fact, you didn't need me. And I understand that very clearly now. You came for the money, and I don't have it. Why not?" Maria raised his eyebrows. "That your daddy switched to his new kids, and you don't get anything from him. That's not the point. Mom gives me money or doesn't give me money. That's none of your business. I don't have any more money for you. I know you didn't leave home empty-handed, and I know who you've been spending it on. Don't come to me again." Look how important Maria curved her lips. "And who's telling me that?" "My own daughter. Your father's such a hero too, giving his kidney to some guy. The whole town is trumpeting it. All the factories have written about it. Obviously, it's done for publicity. After that, he's probably making money with a shovel. But he kicked his wife out of the house and brought a second family. Not a word about that. So how's life with your new family? How do you like your brother? They are normal brothers. Anna cut them off. And their mother is normal. Though she may look like a model, but she is homely, she runs into her father's mouth. Maybe he wanted her like that in the first place. I think your marriage was a mistake. And I shouldn't have been born either. Then Nick would have had a father too. I'm nothing but trouble." If Maria had been an attentive mother, she would have noticed that her daughter was depressed, but she didn't care about Anna. She was frantically thinking, what to do next? Where to get money? After all, without it, her lover would obviously kick her out. He made that clear. Anna, too, did not care about her mother's worries. Slamming the car door loudly, she jumped out and ran to catch up with her friends. She didn't want to go home. It was true, her father had a new family there now. Not that Anna had anything against them. She understood everything. She was not a little girl, but it was the only thing that was unusual in the house. Anna felt superfluous, and maybe not even in the house. Maybe even in this life, and everything seemed fine. Not long ago, she had been so happy when Nick's kidney transplant surgery was successful, and it was clear that the guy was going to live. Donated his organ to him. William was feeling fine too. He had already been discharged from the hospital, but things were much more complicated with Nick. He was still lying down, but the doctors said he was on the mend, and Anna found out through her father. Molly still wouldn't let her near her son and forbade the girl to go near the hospital. "I am grateful to your father, but you can't be with Nick," she said. "You only bear misfortune." Territory believed these words of the girl in reality and began to seem so. She sank into a cruel depression. Didn't want to do anything at all, not going home, not going out with her friends. Why nothing, though? She wanted to be with Nick, but that was impossible. William was working in his office. The doctors had strongly advised bed rest after discharge, but the man had felt normal for a long time. He tried not to go to the office yet, took care of business from home. The man did what he promised Maria right after he kicked her out of the house. He brought his second family here, having made arrangements with Anna beforehand. The boys were happy, and Miranda, their mother, was dusting off Williama. She never entered his office without knocking, for fear of disturbing him while he was working. So now someone creaked through the massive doors. And then Miranda's head appeared. "After all, your friend Anna is here to see you. She wants to talk to you. Do you want to come out in the living room, or should I bring her in?" "Let her come in here. The living room must be where the boys walk on their heads. That's the way it is." Miranda laughed. A couple of minutes later, a close friend, Anna Molly, walked into William's office. "Hello." Confused, she said. "Radha does not know about my visit to you, and you please do not tell her, or she will be offended. But I am very worried about her." "What's the matter?" "Molly, I can see that Anna is sad, but it's because of Poland. His mother won't let them see each other anymore. That's why the girl is sad, but in time, she will forget him." "Sad will forget?" Emily exclaimed. "I wouldn't call it that. What about you?" You know that your daughter goes to the roof of an unfinished high rise and stands and looks down for hours. What do you think she's thinking at that moment? I'm very scared for her. I'm worried. She's got it into her head that she only brings bad luck to people around her. And she has no life in this world without Nick. I thought at first she was just in love too, and that she'd forget about him. But you know she won't. Anna really loves this guy. We have to do something urgently. I'm really worried about Anna. After the girl's words, William was worried. He had no idea that his daughter's feelings for him were so serious. Molly pulled her son's things out of the hospital bedside table and neatly put them in bags. We're finally coming home with you, Sonny. I didn't bake you any cabbage pies. How do you like it? The women wouldn't stop talking. But Nick was the husband, and the mother knew the reason why, from the beginning. As soon as the guy came to his senses, Molly told him she wouldn't let him date this girl and explained the reason. If you want me dead, go ahead and date this girl. Step over my mother. With these words, the woman ended her monologue. She wasn't even affected by the fact that William had donated his kidney to her son, and the fact that the man opened a large money account in his name. And the money, by the way, the woman refused for a long time and was already going to give it back to William. That's when their first serious conversation happened. Understand, Molly, this is a small fraction of what I have to do for you. I gave my kidney and your husband gave his whole life. Of course, the money won't give it back to you. But Molly, think to yourself, wouldn't Mike have earned it if he were alive? And if he wasn't, whose fault is it? That's just it. I want Nick to get a college education full-time, not working like he's doing now. And you need to stop scrubbing floors in your hospital. It's time to get some rest. Nick will finish his degree. If he has a brain, he'll start his own business. He'll have startup capital. Will you let me do at least that for you? Molly pondered about it for a very long time. And then he squeezed it out. Okay, we'll take your money. Let Nick have a chance for a normal future, not like me. But keep in mind, dating Anna, I won't let him anyway. That's your right. William shrugged then, taking young people's relationships lightly. Molly and her son came out of the hospital gate, and Nick took a breath of fresh air, which they already lacked in the hospital ward. At that moment, a huge SUV pulled up in front of them. William jumped out of the car and grabbed the bags. Don't bother. We'll take the bus, Molly tried to argue. The man pushed them into the car without hearing any objections. As he drove away from the hospital, he turned into the first parking lot he could find and turned around and looked at Nick in the back seat. So Nick, how do you feel about my daughter? I love her. He didn't hesitate for a second and answered. I see, said William. Then tell me, why did you put up with your mother's prohibition? Nick hesitated. Then, lowering his eyes, he said quietly, I did not. What? Molly shrieked from the front seat. She immediately turned around to her son too. What do you mean you're not okay with it, Nick? What are you talking about? Mom, you have to understand. I only think about Anna all the time, and I understand you, and I don't want to upset you. But I can't stop thinking about her either. I was going to meet her and talk to her. And if she's reconciled to our breakup, well, I won't insist, of course. She's not reconciled, cried William. She is very much in disagreement. So much so that she's thinking of jumping off the roof. That's what I learned from her friend. Molly, you're a mature, rational person. What are you doing? Let the young people decide their own fate. It's not like they're to blame for our sins. The more we get in their way now, the more they'll be drawn to each other. They'll run away on their own if it's not their destiny, but we mustn't get involved. If my daughter jumps off the roof, would that make you feel better? And your Mike will have died for nothing and given his life for her. Molly, wake up. The woman almost cried. Why are you making a monster out of me? I had a change of heart about that girl when she wanted to give up her kidney. But I'm afraid I have a kind of crazy fear. Nick put his hand on his mother's shoulder and smiled. Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine now for sure. All the skeletons are out of the closets. And there's only happiness ahead. A week later, 2 young men, a boy and a girl, came to the cemetery. The girl was holding a huge bouquet of scarlet roses. Here he is, my father, the boy said, stopping near one of the graves. From the monument, a young man with an open, friendly face looked at the girl. "Thank you," Anna whispered, putting flowers on the grave. "Thank you for my life, and for Nick."